Welcome to the Healthcare Executive Podcast, providing you with insightful commentary and developments in the world of healthcare leadership. To learn more, visit ache.org. And without further ado, your host.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Healthcare Executive Podcast. Our guest today is Delvecchio Finley, president of Atrium Health Navicent in Macon, Georgia. Previously, Delvecchio held executive roles with Alameda Health System, LA County Harbor UCLA Medical Center, California Pacific Medical Center, and Zuckerberg San Francisco General Hospital and Trauma Center, among several others. In March, he was named to the 2023-2024 chair of the ACHE Board of Governors. He has a long history of volunteer service, including the American Hospital Association, the California Hospital Association, the Georgia Hospital Association, the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, the California Association of Public Hospitals, and the Essential Hospitals Institute. He is also the recipient of numerous awards and commendations. In 2015, Modern Healthcare recognized him through its Up and Comers program, and in 2016, named him one of its diversity leaders to watch. He was also named in 2015 to Becker's Hospital Review's Top 25 Healthcare Leaders Under 40 list. And in 2021, Modern Healthcare recognized him again, naming him one of the top 25 diversity leaders in healthcare. In 2022, he was included on Georgia Trends magazine Georgia 500 list of the state's most influential leaders. Delvecchio earned a Master of Public Policy from Duke University's Sanford Institute of Public Policy, a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Emory University, and a graduate certificate in health policy, law, and management from Duke University. And he is, of course, board certified as a fellow of ACHE. You can read more about his background in his profile on ache.org. With that introduction, Delvecchio, welcome to the Healthcare Executive Podcast. Such an honor to have you here today.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
All right, first and foremost, congratulations on your role as chair of the ACHE Board of Governors. So if you don't mind, would you share with us a little bit about your career journey? Really, what attracted you to the healthcare field?
Sure, Eric. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and obviously your listeners or our members who are joining us on the podcast. My professional background began in the Bay Area. I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised, but got bit by this thing called love. And my wife was going to law school out in West Coast. And so off we went. And I spent the earlier part of my formative years of my career working in various organizations and institutions across the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, working first in physician practice and management, working in the Department of Public Health in San Francisco, moving over to the university and working at the State Med Hospital, San Francisco General, and then several other organizations, Sutter Health, and now to Los Angeles County, and then back up to Alameda County, now to where I am back home in the state of Georgia as a leader for the Central and South Georgia market, now Advocate Health, formerly Atrium Health, a growing organization that now serves communities throughout Illinois, Wisconsin, Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So but a great career journey, and I feel incredibly fortunate to be in this role.
So on that journey, let's talk about ACHE and the membership. How and the board certification, how has that helped you along the way?
Yeah, it's been so many ways. It's too numerous to enumerate, but I'll point out three that come to mind. I mean, certainly we have, and it has been since our founding, a commitment to what we call lifelong learning, and ACHE and all of its tools, and obviously the credentialing program facilitates and has facilitated for me the platform for continuous learning and development, knowledge and expertise with which to apply to my role, all the various roles that I've had the clear privilege of serving in. So I think that has been probably foremost one of the benefits that I've had. The second one is kind of an adjunct to that. It's access to a network of experts and expertise, the educators for all of our different seminars and virtual learning now and all those other things. I have just been really, the tools, the books and virtual tools that we have been incredibly great. But even more importantly, I would say the network of colleagues, people who are near and far. Sometimes they're in your organization, sometimes they're directly adjacent in a geographic area, but sometimes they're people all over the country and in some cases the world who you can call upon because we're in this profession that is so committed to helping one another and wanting all of us to be the best for the communities we serve, even sometimes when we have competitive dynamics. So that's just been absolutely amazing. And then finally, I would say, and it's one that fuels the first two, opportunities to serve to serve our membership and to help other people who are, similarly passionate about helping communities and organizations to advance healthcare and health, but then to grow through that service. And I think the more I was fond of saying it when I would visit student chapters for ACHE and, now that I'm visiting other chapters, I say to people, it's like so much in life, you get out of it as much, if not more, than you put into it. So there's a definitely good kind of return, if you will, on increasing investment when you become and not just a member of ACHE, a fellow in ACHE, and a volunteer leader in ACHE. All of those things really have a multiplier effect on how it can advance your knowledge and your access to experts and, network that can help you to be the best you can be.
And you were just talking about your network there, impressive network of colleagues, and something we like to talk a lot about on the Healthcare Executive Podcast is DEI in leadership. So from your experiences, what you've heard from those colleagues, what are some of the biggest barriers that we're still facing to diverse leaders moving into the senior level C-suite management positions?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and it's one that I want to grapple with myself a fair amount, certainly from my own experience as a African American male who has gone up to my own professional experience, but also others, both in organizations I've worked with, but also just through that network we mentioned. I just happened about a week ago to be at the Institute for Diversity and Health Equity's Accelerating Health Equity Conference and sat on a panel. And it was yet another opportunity to think about this. And I looked up the definition for diversity. And one of the Oxford definitions of it is the practice or quality of including or involving people from a range of different social and ethnic backgrounds and of different genders, sexual orientations, etc. So it's interesting that the noun actually acknowledged the practice of including people. So when you talk about what are some of those barriers to diverse leaders being able of all those ilks, right? Race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, so on and so forth, being able to advance their career in healthcare leadership. It's the barriers are often things like not seeing it as a feasible thing within their organization. It could be as a unit of the organization or department or division or geographic region of the organization or the organization writ large. And that's often manifests in you see people or over the arc of the history of that organization, people who reflect you, who look like you, who maybe have the same cultural background as you or came from the same part of the country as you or their same gender as you. And you see them kind of showing you that example of what's possible as a means of saying that that's something that not only is possible in the organization, but the organization embraces it and facilitates it. The other thing is a lack of acknowledgement, oftentimes, I think, in many of our organizations of the current state, or even an expressed desire, commitment, or intentional efforts at diversity, that noun, and I would say the verb of diversity to the actions. And then even worse, I would say one of those barriers is failed attempts that people see, visceral efforts, even that thwart accountability to change the status quo. I think it's Newton's law that an object in motion stays in motion unless it's interrupted by an equal and opposite force, right? So when you have organizations that have a trajectory that may be structural, historical, what have you, anything that's desirous of changing that means that you either have to do something different or you have to state something different or approach things differently. And I think these things can become and are real barriers to diverse leaders being able to fully bring the value of what they have to bring, which is very rich to organizations. And unfortunately, I think oftentimes organizations, whether we're talking about the governance level or leadership level or other parts of the organization, suffer because or are not as effective as they can be because we have in some ways minimized the impact that certain segments of our population and our workforce are able to optimize their value to the organization.
And I heard you touch on it a little bit there, but what's your advice? What can organizations do to remove some of those barriers? And obviously, there are different scenarios in different parts of the country,
Mhm.
different challenges, but maybe, and you mentioned, some of these that are already in motion and you've established things, but what are some of those that, with our audience of C-suite executives and administrators listening, what are some of those things that organizations can do to remove some of those barriers?
Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing is intentionality. I think it's like anything else, whether we're talking about diversity or we're talking about improving quality, we're talking about, any other sort of opportunity that we think stands between us and fulfilling our mission for the organization, first and foremost, but also the vision for what we believe that the organization can be or become takes an intentional effort or set of efforts to actually manifest it. And so if BEI is something that organizations are about and not just saying, nice to do, oh, it'd be great if it happened, but I don't really, want to do anything about it, then you're probably going to get the results that you have. But if you are serious about it, you have to be intentional, and it's walking the walk, it's talking the talk, lifting it up and making it as much the individual, I would say as much, but I would think more the organization's responsibility than the individuals. And so you're setting in place the processes and outcome goals that you want to achieve. It can be very evidence based. There's plenty of tools and a lot of knowledge over the last several decades, if not longer, that forward thinking and more accelerated organizations in this space have done for us to learn. So it's not even about it reinventing the wheel. It's really just about going out and talking to the people who developed the wheel and saying, how do I do that in this context, and applying it in a way, not just cookie cutter, because as you mentioned, Eric, and I agree, everybody's circumstances are different, whether it's the makeup of your community being different, not just about gender, but ethnicity, or if it's about socioeconomic status or any of those things. And so you've got to not just take something off the shelf or check boxes, but you've got to say, is this really again, a variable, a situation that a barrier to me achieving the vision and value of or vision and goals of the organization? And if so, then I've got to actually have a set of activities, actions that are measurable and have a defined goal that can evolve, but that I'm going to go at, I'm going to get at it. And I think that's really what organizations have been successful and continue to experience success about this in this space are doing. And I think that's what others would have to do as well.
Mm, some great advice and great action items there that you laid out for us. Another challenge a lot of our listeners are facing, healthcare leaders, burnout at all levels.
Mm.
You've spoken, you've written about how a purpose driven mindset can help us get through some of these tough times. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's been interesting because if burnout existed, this is like some of the other things in terms of challenges that we face, but it existed well before the pandemic, but certainly was put on hyperdrive during that and for some very, very obvious reasons. And I think as a kind of a sort of almost visceral reaction to the burnout that we're experiencing in the face of the challenges that we're facing, we started really lifting up, in some ways appropriately so, acknowledging the resilience of individuals who were experiencing that burnout, but still persevering in the face of it. And in some ways, that was good, but very short lived, because resilience is a good thing and certainly is an outcome or a byproduct of something else. And I think we sort of started to see resilience as the object, like the thing that people had to do. It's almost like I see it as tantamount to, you have someone who's going through depression. There's some commercials that look at it and like, oh, well, you just need to not be depressed, right? It's just be happy, right? That's the end of it. It's not that simple. It's not that simple. And you appear a little bit sort of flippant and shallow when you're like, good for you, you're resilient. Like, and now take on even more, right? So to me, it came back to, well, what's the source of resilience? All right. What really gets people to be able to do more than what would otherwise be feasible or expected in a circumstance? And that gets to purpose, like your why, what drives you, what motivates you. And I think in healthcare, we have the real strong fortune of knowing that this is a service-based sector. And whether you're in a clinical role or non-clinical role, everybody you talk to in healthcare says, I was driven to this because I wanted to do something that was about helping others, right? Very little about helping self. All of this, the component of it, about helping others. And so as we get to, symptoms and increasing symptoms of burnout, what we find is people have like detached from that why. Something about either the work that we're expecting them to do or the circumstances we're expecting them to endure has detached them from what was the thing that was driving them. It's almost like, taking a battery operated device off of a charger for a long period of time and saying, hey, but you gotta, go nonstop, almost like you're on a solar sort of thing. You have to be recharged, just like a battery, just like a device. At some point, you got to be recharged. And it would be nice if that charging and use of charge, or you will, the expenditure of the charge or the energy was more organic. And that's where purpose comes in. Purpose is that charge. So you got to keep connected to the purpose. And that's when people see that resilience that people are talking about, is when you stay connected to your purpose. And so for me, personally, I would say, but also through leading teams. What I really try to do my best in terms of modeling, but also try to help people do is say, remember why you got into this. And let's make sure that as you progress in your own career or as circumstances evolve, that why can also evolve, but you need that why. To me, it's very important to have that why so that it's that charging thing you keep plugging into. And so that's why I think purpose is so important. And we kind of saw the outcome as resilient and thought that that was the goal, or really purpose is the goal, resilience is the outcome.
I think there are a lot of people either listening to this in their car or or at work, and they're inspired right now. And so, what are some of those things that the advice you might have for the emerging leader who's listening to you right now, going, you know what, I think I can be CEO of a hospital one day, and I like the way you're phrasing things, and I resonate with that, and it's helping people. Anything that you credit for your professional growth, a who or a what, maybe?
A lot, man.
Yeah,
To be honest, many
it's not a
people,
one word
and
answer.
I,
Yeah.
no, no, yeah, a lot of people know about my background, raised by a single mom in public housing, and not a lot of resources kind of organically at my disposal, but was just incredibly blessed to have so many people who saw potential in me and helped me to manifest that. So even before getting to the professional stage, I'd just be remiss if I didn't acknowledge all those people. I always have to get back to that. But for me, then that means, I get to the adage or parable to them, much is given, much is required. And so that connection is definitely there. In terms of specific things, I mean, let's just lead with the obvious. ACHE from a professional context has been, as I mentioned earlier, a source of a lot of that expertise and support for me. Obviously, former bosses who've also taken a chance on me and given me opportunities to grow and test out something and make some mistakes and not be career limiting, right? So that you can learn and grow and do that. And by that extension, and certainly mentors, but the people and teams that I've had and have the privilege of leading. I've learned so much from them and have been incredibly appreciative of not just their encouragement, but their patience, right? And their willingness to I said Tom Atchison, one of our ACT teachers, wrote a book, Followership, subjugate their right to self-determination to follow, my lead, because for some reason I've been able to convince them that I could get them either farther or faster than they could get alone. So that's been for me great. And that's what I say as advice to others that were interested in continuing to grow their career. Seize as many opportunities as you can to grow, take calculated risks. I think, I'm a firm believer in no risks, no rewards, but you can't be reckless. Learn as much from your mistakes and failures as you do your successes and stay mindful of your value and the value you bring and continue to ensure that you're continuing to bring value and express thanks and appreciation because none of us get to wherever we are by ourselves.
And yeah, I think you heard me. I was getting a little short of breath in your intro there with all the awards and accolades that I was listing off. And what do you were there anything in there that maybe was your proudest accomplishment or something of recognition that that means the most to you?
Oh, wow. So I dare not get myself in trouble with this one, but I think the biggest thing for me to say is that while the accolades that may come to me, because, you have to, I guess, give it to somebody, any acknowledgement where I just left off, any acknowledgement that I have received or honors that I've had to serve have been and continue to be attributable to teams behind me, people who have been the wind beneath my wings
Mm.
to say, look, we got your back, go forward. We believe in you. We believe this is important. This has mutual benefit because I try to do things that, are more beneficial to others than they are for myself. But I do acknowledge that, the service, as I said, helps me to grow and I get a lot back from it too. So I don't think I could cite any one thing. It'd be everyone is special and I cherish and value any acknowledgement that I've received. But again, it's really thanks in large part to those who I've served alongside. So
And performing at that level, and this is just out of my curiosity, I think earlier you mentioned, taking the battery off the charger and putting the batteries back on. What do you do personally to relax, unwind, reset, hobbies, anything?
yeah, I kind of well, I have to be true to my word. Yes, but I've done a lot more self exploration in the last probably 2 years, but
Okay.
certainly the last year than I have. And I'll be honest, Eric, a lot of that came from a big stumble in my last role. I think I was leading an organization, which I felt very privileged to lead, but perhaps lost a little bit of sight that leadership wasn't as much mine as I perhaps thought it was. In fact, it was probably less mine than I thought it was. And I had to acknowledge that there were some value differences between what I saw as the sort of right direction for the organization and others who an ability to shape that, at which point I had to really come to terms with the fact that it wasn't the right thing for me any longer. And trying to figure out and, how not to have a situation where that appreciation of the variation is so cataclysmic, because I'm sure there were probably signals all along. So it's been really trying to, really come to terms with who am I and what do I want out of life and what's the impact I'd like to have and where the best places and opportunities where my skills, values align with those of communities that I'm attempting to serve. And, the fact if they don't align, it's not an indictment on myself or them for that matter. It's just a misalignment and that's okay. So I think for me, it's been self exploration and really trying to see how I leave the world a better place because then I found it because I feel privileged in that regard. But, not to be too overly cerebral. I like to relax too. And part of my relaxing, quite honestly, it has been a little disappointing perhaps if I is doing absolutely nothing. To just kind of like put on a pair of sweatpants and t-shirt and just like zone out because it's my recharge, right? It's like, okay, just stop expending energy and let it recharge. So there's that. Golf, but sometimes that frustrates me because I'm not that good at it. Walking is really good. I've learned that actually I've been surprised at, how much walking helps my physical fitness as much as I love to run. It can be draining and I feel the endorphins and the runner's high. I love it, but the walking is a lot more sustainable and actually it helps you. I lost weight where I was like, I didn't think you could lose weight walking, but you can. And then I would like remiss if I didn't say family too. Family is incredibly important to me. These are people who love you, good, bad, or indifferent, or at least I hope so. And so, I'm a girl dad, and my daughter is the center of my universe, and so watching her grow and become the beautiful person inside and out that she's become, and trying not to mess her up has been a really huge source of energy and preoccupation for me as well.
Well, that's fantastic, and I think a lot of our listeners absolutely resonate with the doing nothing. We love that. We love doing nothing, and just don't address me for 40 minutes, and I'll just sit here in my sweatpants, and that will recharge my batteries. Absolutely.
Right on.
Last thing before you go, we did mention earlier, you are ACHE's chair for 2023. So, what are the issues that you're committed to addressing to your term, and what are you most hopeful about when it comes to the healthcare field?
Yeah, I really appreciate this question because it gives me a chance to really acknowledge. I for a long time have had the privilege of serving on the ACHE board, and I've served on many boards. And you learn when you're on this governance journey that everything's a little bit different. And I often refer to it's such a mature board, and not just in it's art, but our current board leaders. I think we are so fortunate to have all of them, but I've often referred to them as one of my high performing boards. And I use the examples of some of our processes and activities and some of the work that we do to guide and inform value that I bring to other boards and my own board, my organization. So, my foremost responsibility as board chair is being the best board chair I can be, facilitating our board being as effective as it can be in support of our leadership, one another, and most importantly, our membership. And we have some real important strategies and imperatives that we're trying to drive. We frame them as being catalysts, connectors, and trusted partners for our members. We're trying to advance healthcare management excellence. Obviously, always trying to do that. That's core to our mission. But in terms of specific issues that we are, or areas of opportunities that we're focused on now, our quality journey has been a long journey that we've been on in terms of demonstrating effectiveness and stewardship in driving the quality agenda of our various organizations that our members lead and providing them the tools to be as effective as possible in their ability to do that. Same in DEI, actually, what we talked about earlier. So ACHE, I think, has deservedly so been acknowledged and looked at as one of the leaders in helping to provide the advocacy and the tools and resources to advance DEI in the healthcare management space. And we continue to do that and really underscore collaborations and partnerships with other entities. A lot of our affinity groups like NACI and NALI and our internal groups like our LGBTQ community and forum, our Asian leadership forum, but also with the Institute for Diversity as well as AUPHA, the Association of University Health Management Programs. We also focus on just helping our leaders generally to be better able to lead their teams and organizations and to grow their own professional journey as well, and making sure that everybody has the access and tools and abilities to do that through as customized an experience as possible and as curated an experience as possible for all of our leaders. And so our board is very committed to ensuring that we evolve our tools and resources throughout ACHA to meet the expectations, evolving expectations of our membership so that we can grow and grow them in the process.
You've been listening to Delvecchio Finley. He is the president of Atrium Health Navicent in Macon, Georgia, and the 2023 to 2024 ACHE chair. Delvecchio, such a pleasure. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Eric. Been great.
All right. And thank you so much for listening. As always, we will catch you next time right here on the Healthcare Executive Podcast from ACHE.
This has been the Healthcare Executive Podcast, brought to you by the American College of Healthcare Executives. If you've enjoyed the show, please consider rating and reviewing on iTunes or your podcasting app of choice. And for more information, find us online at ache.org.